1974, shortly after a forest fire struck the Betz family property on Fort George Island near Jacksonville, Florida, Antoinette, Jerry, and their son Terry found something that simply didn't make sense among the ashes. There was a perfectly smooth, silent metal sphere, with no visible manufacturing marks, resting as if it had been placed there on purpose. There were no seams, screws, openings, or signs of wear. It measured about 20 centimeters in diameter and was far too heavy for its size. Near the surface, only a small triangular symbol broke the uniformity of the polished metal. Initially, the family thought it was some kind of industrial waste or naval fragment, something left behind by the fire or brought in by the tide. But a few minutes of observation were enough to make that hypothesis begin to crumble. The balance was too perfect. The finish seemed industrially impossible for something abandoned or damaged. Still, the sphere was taken inside the family home, known locally as the castle, and treated as a strange curiosity, nothing more. This impression was short-lived. Within days, the object began exhibiting behaviors that transformed curiosity into unease. The sphere vibrated slightly at irregular intervals and produced subtle metallic sounds, almost like a muffled mechanical hum. When exposed to the sun, it heated up rapidly and retained heat for much longer than any ordinary metal. There was no simple explanation for it. The object seemed to react to its environment. Concerned, the Betz contacted military authorities and NASA, imagining it might be some kind of experimental equipment. The responses brought no relief. None of the institutions could identify the object or associate it with any known project. The sphere was not listed in any records, inventories, or active programs. It was as if it shouldn't exist. Improvised tests at home made the situation even stranger. When rolled across the floor, the sphere slowed down on its own, changed direction, and on several occasions, returned to the side of whoever had pushed it. On a glass table, it resisted falling off the edge and seemed to move against slight inclines. The reactions were not random. They were repeatable, consistent, and observed by different people. For those present, the sensation was unsettling. It didn't seem like a simple object obeying gravity. Over time, the family realized that the reactions varied according to external stimuli. Light, heat, and sound directly influenced the sphere's behavior. Rudimentary measurements revealed a rhythmic internal pulse, occurring approximately every 47 seconds. At that moment, the detail was recorded, but not understood. The situation took a new turn when friends and visitors witnessed something even more unexpected. One afternoon, Terry Betz was playing the guitar when they noticed that certain notes made the sphere vibrate. Low tones produced an audible hum. Higher notes caused a more intense resonance. When the music stopped, the sphere became completely silent. When the guitar started playing again, the reaction reappeared instantly. The response didn't depend on volume, but on frequency. Other tests showed that the object possessed mild magnetic properties. Paper clips adhered subtly to the surface, and after prolonged periods of movement, the magnetic field seemed to temporarily intensify before weakening again. The combination of variable magnetism, heat retention, and specific sound response placed the sphere outside any known technological category at the time. When local journalists visited the castle and witnessed the phenomena, the story spiraled out of control. A reporter from the Jacksonville Journal described seeing the sphere move on its own and change direction without physical contact. Within days, the case went from a domestic curiosity to a national sensation. Reporters, amateur researchers, engineers, and curious onlookers flocked to the property. Phone calls and letters poured in. For a reserved family, the attention was overwhelming. With his house located just a few kilometers from a large naval airbase, Jerry Betz decided to formally contact the United States Navy. His hope was simple, a definitive technical analysis that would solve the mystery. After some hesitation, the Navy agreed to examine the sphere in a controlled environment. The tests were extensive. X-rays revealed something unexpected. The sphere was not solid. It was a hollow shell, about 2.5 centimeters thick, containing at least 2 smaller spheres inside, perfectly shaped and apparently suspended freely. There were no circuits, batteries, gears, or any detectable electronic components. There was no dangerous radioactivity, nor any signs of explosives. Officially, The Navy declared that the object did not match anything in its records and posed no threat. Publicly, the explanation was reduced to a piece of stainless steel of unknown origin, possibly industrial. Behind the scenes, however, not everyone was convinced. Some hypotheses mentioned large mechanical bearings used in heavy engineering, but no explanation accounted for the internal structure, the absence of manufacturing marks, and, above all, the observed behavior. After the sphere was returned, independent investigators began to appear. One of them, Dr. Carl Willis, who presented himself as a nuclear physicist affiliated with an organization called the Omega-1 Institute, conducted non-invasive tests and emerged deeply disturbed. He stated that the energy readings were not compatible with known materials and advised extreme caution. Shortly afterward, Willis disappeared. There were no clear records of the institution he claimed to represent, nor confirmation of his credentials. The episode fueled suspicions that the case involved something more than a simple strange object. Another name that entered the story was that of engineer James Albert Hardin. His studies suggested that the sphere possessed multiple metallic layers of different densities, and an internal structure that could not have been assembled using known techniques without leaving traces. Even more controversially, Hardin claimed that the internal material exhibited properties associated with an atomic number far beyond that of officially known elements. Although his conclusions were never independently confirmed, they changed the tone of the debate. The sphere ceased to be merely a mechanical curiosity and came to be seen as something potentially revolutionary. As attention grew, even more unsettling situations arose. One night, a group of men appeared offering a large sum of money for the sphere, demanding absolute silence. The family refused. After that, strange phone calls, unfamiliar vehicles nearby, and unmarked mail became part of their daily routine. Nothing was proven, but the atmosphere of intimidation was real. The peak of public exposure came when the sphere was taken to New Orleans for an evaluation that included astronomer J. Allen Hynek, known for his involvement in official UFO investigations. Despite the visibility, no definitive conclusion was presented. Gradually, media interest waned. Skeptical theories gained traction. Engineers began to argue that the sphere was nothing more than an industrial component, with movements explainable by irregular weight distribution, acoustic resonance, and microscopic imperfections. These explanations made sense in part, but they never explained everything. Why did the sphere react so consistently to music? Why did it resist falling from surfaces? Why did it respond to sunlight? The inconsistencies remained. Still, over time, the case was relegated to folklore. The Betz family withdrew from public life. The sphere became silent, inert, as if something inside it had simply switched off. For decades, the mystery was considered solved. Until, in early 2025, the story unexpectedly resurfaced. A private collector donated a metallic sphere with identical characteristics to Oak Ridge National Laboratory. The documentation stated that the object had belonged to the Betz family. Skeptical, but intrigued, the researchers decided to conduct a new analysis using modern technology. The results did not confirm the simple explanation of an industrial artifact. On the contrary, unusual properties were detected, rekindling questions that had been dormant for almost 50 years. At the same time, declassified Cold War documents came to light, mentioning experiments with sonic resonance spheres, devices capable of converting sound vibrations into kinetic energy. These prototypes would operate with an internal calibration pulse every 47 seconds. The detail was impossible to ignore. That was exactly the interval recorded at the Betz house in 1974. The documents also described response to light, heat retention, instability, after prolonged exposure to sound energy, and temporary shutdown under intense electromagnetic fields. Everything matched. According to this information, some units were lost during transport in the 1960s. If this connection is real, the Betz sphere would be neither extraterrestrial nor supernatural. It would perhaps be something even more unsettling: experimental military technology, developed far ahead of its time and then abandoned, forgotten, or deliberately erased from history. The original sphere disappeared. The archives remain incomplete, and those who knew more never spoke. All that remains is the pulse, a regular heartbeat recorded decades ago, like the silent signature of something that shouldn't have been found by an ordinary family walking through the ashes of a fire. And now I want to know from you. Do you believe the Betz sphere was lost military technology, or something even more advanced? Leave your opinion in the comments, like the video, and subscribe to the channel.